I would like to acknowledge that this video is being filmed on the traditional lands of the Wurrundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander or First Nations people who may be watching this video today. Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. In advance, I sound croaky because I have what I think is a cold. Everything tells me that it's a cold. So I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible just because I can't talk for extended periods of time without coughing a lot. So we're going to jump straight into this. This is my reading week from the 7th until the 12th of May. I read a total of 8 things this week, 2,771 pages, and my yearly reading total is 214 books. The first book that I read in this time bracket was Always Practice Safe Hex by Juliette Cross, which is the 4th book in the Stay a Spell series. I have a complete vlog of myself reading this book because I did receive it for review from Juliette, so I will leave a link to that on the screen. But to summarize, the Stay a Spell series is an urban fantasy paranormal romance series set in New Orleans following the Savoy sisters. In this case, we're following Livy, and she is an influencer, so she has the power to influence other people with her magic, and she has applied for this prestigious internship slash competition with a marketing company, and she is one of the 3 finalists, and one of the other finalists happens to be Gareth, who is a Grimm, who one of the magical beings who we have met in this world but we don't know a huge amount about. And Livy and Gareth have this kind of enemies to lovers type story, and they are forced to work together on this competition along with another competitor. I really loved this. I loved Gareth. I loved finding out about the Grimms, and their relationship was just fantastic. So I can't wait for this to be released. I'm going to reread it when it does come out. But if you would like to see more of my thoughts on it, definitely check out the vlog. I also received a review copy of Wicked Beauty by Katee Robert, which is the 3rd book in her Dark Olympus series. I got this on NetGalley, and NetGalley is really funny with me with Katee Robert books because most of the time I get declined for them, so I don't know why I got approved for Wicked Beauty, but I'm glad that I did. This is one of her traditionally published series, and in this case, Wicked Beauty is a polyamorous relationship between Helen, Achilles, and Patroclus. Now, the first thing to note about the Dark Olympus series is that while it uses a lot of the names of the Greek gods and goddesses and figures from Greek mythology, Katee Robert takes a lot of liberty with things, so be aware of that going into it. Now, I am less of a stickler for accuracy with that sort of stuff, so I enjoyed the story, but I can see how it would bother other people that she has not stayed true to sort of the canon, if you will. And in this case, the position of Ares, one of the 12 of Olympus, is available and up for grabs because the previous Ares has died. And the way that the new Ares is determined is sort of by 3 trials / trial by combat. Helen has these plans that she hasn't really told anyone, that she is going to put her name in the ring for Ares because she's sick of being under the thumb of her family, who are all members of the 12, and she's the only one who's not. But when the announcement is made, suddenly it is announced that Helen is one of the prizes for the new Ares and that she will be married to whoever wins the title, and she is furious. Rightly so. So she still enters her name into the competition, as well as a whole bunch of other people, including Achilles and Patroclus, and they all go head to head through these 3 competitions. There is a forced proximity situation in this book because while they are waiting for each of these events, they are all housed off-site away from most of Olympus, and as it turns out, Helen, Achilles, and Patroclus are all housed in the same apartment area. Now in this story, Achilles and Patroclus already have a relationship, it's established, and this is about how Helen fits into the mix. But what I will say is that I wish we had spent a little bit more time, mostly with Patroclus from his perspective, because I felt that at the end, Achilles and Patroclus's relationship, I accepted it, I understood it, it was there, but I wanted more from that because the book really is Helen's story, and fair enough, I really like that because she's very determined to get exactly what she has been planning for, and everyone underestimates her and she's determined to show them up for that. And I just wish we'd explored the dynamic between the 3 of them and the existing relationship a little bit more. But that said, I had a really great time and it was really fun, and I'm very interested to see how this book goes because it's a traditionally published polyamorous romance, and I think it's great that Katee Robert, because of her reputation, is able to get those things out there. So much for not talking very much. The next 2 books I read were books 1 and 2 in the Hidden Legacy series by Lona Andrews. So there is Burn For Me and there is White Hot. I am hosting the Hidden Legacy read-along with Megan, Izzy and Heather, so that is coming up next weekend. I decided to read these books this week because I just needed to pick me up because one, I wasn't feeling super fantastic, and also work. So I read these. This is an urban fantasy-esque story. It's sort of like it's almost like an alternate history of the United States, in that in the past there has been a serum that was discovered that allowed people to develop their magical abilities or magical potential. And it was called the Osiris serum, and it changed the course of history. And so now it has given rise to families who have strong magical birthrights, and those are determined by families that have very strong magic users called primes. Both stories are told from the perspective of Nevada Baylor. She is a private investigator. She's in her mid-20s and she lives with her family, her mother and grandmother, who are combat veterans. She has 2 sisters and her 2 cousins, and they're barely keeping this investigative agency afloat because they are in debt to one of the strong magical houses, House Montgomery. Nevada is forced by House Montgomery to take on a case that puts her in the path of a very dangerous prime known as Mad Rogan. He has a reputation. He was in the military. He did a lot of damage, and suddenly now his sights are set on her because he believes that she is standing in the way of something that he himself is investigating, and so their paths cross because they are actually sort of on the same path. The romance in here doesn't really kick off until white hot. So in Burn For Me you get a lot of sexual tension. It is very much a morality chain. Rogan kidnaps Nevada at one point. You know, he's the epitome of a morality chain, especially in White Hot, because once he realizes his feelings for Nevada, everything he does is not dictated by Nevada, but he is aware of her influence. So I really, really enjoy this. I love the side characters. I love getting back to this. It's a reread for me, and I'm very, very excited to continue on, and I'm going to have to hold myself back from picking them up straight away, even though I just want to dive straight into them. I also read All Scot and Bothered by Kerrigan Byrne. This is the second book in this particular series, and I forgot, The Devil You Know series, book 2. This week was the historical romance readathon, which I did not participate in, but I did pick up one historical romance book, so loose participation. This is my honorary mention for that readathon. Typically, I really like Kerrigan Byrne's historical romances, but this one fell a little bit flat for me. So this one follows Cecilia Teague, who is one of a group of 3 friends, and we met her in the previous book. And she has just inherited a ladies' school that also happens to be a gambling hell, and amongst other things. And this sets her in the crosshairs of Ramsay, who works for, I think he works for Scotland Yard. And he was previously investigating her aunt who ran this school prior. And both of them have their own past traumas that they are dealing with, and they have to sort of come to grips with as they investigate exactly what happened, and also a secret society in London that features very powerful men who are trafficking young children. And like, the story itself was fine. I just found that the pacing was a little bit off for me. I found it really slow to get through, which is not necessarily a bad thing for some people. It's just, when I like to read a book, I like to feel like I'm fully invested and I want to keep reading, but I found myself kept putting this one down. I may pick up the 3rd book in the series. I am kind of intrigued by the 2 characters because we see their interactions a little bit in this book. So stay tuned on that front, I suppose. After that, I read Carly Lane's new book, A Stone's Throw Away. I received this for a review from Alan and Unwin, so thank you very much to them. Carly Lane writes romantic fiction. She is Australian. I've been reviewing her books for ages, and I happen to be blurbed like 3 or 4 times in the front of the book, which is kind of cool. I've read every book that she's released in the last 3 or 4 years, and I find her books very comforting. They are small town country romances set in Australian towns. In this case, we have Philippa Davenport, who is an investigative journalist who is coming to house sit for her uncle in a very, very small rural town in Victoria. This is in part to get away from her normal life because she was on a long-term story that had consequences for her. She unveiled political corruption and she was attacked in her own home as a result of that, and so she's still dealing sort of with the trauma and the fallout of that. She's also gotten a book deal to write about the story that she has written, and she's suffering from the inability to get started on this book. So everyone convinces her to take this retreat for a couple of months, small town, get away from everything, no one knows who she is, etc. And it's all going fine, and then because of the drought, the local dam has started to dry up, and she's noticed that there's all this garbage and stuff in the dam, and because she's on her uncle's property, she figures, what the hell, I'll get someone to come in and clear it for him. I'm staying here, it's the least I can do. And as they're clearing something, they discover a skull in a car in this dried up dam. And so suddenly there is now a murder investigation going on, and she finds herself in the thick of it because she becomes intrigued by the story of the people of this town and the person who owned her uncle's home prior to him. So this was fun. It was a nice little mystery. There's a little bit of magical realism thrown in here as well, and it was just a really calm reading experience, which I definitely could have used last week. So it was very well timed. I also read Mercy by Deborah Anastasia. This was a book that Brie had told me that she thought I would enjoy. I'd heard her talking about it a couple of times, and I asked her if she thought that I would enjoy it, and she said yes. This is a dark romance. It is about Becca and Nix. Nix, as a young child, witnessed his father murder his mother and had been physically abused by his father at this point. And when they are in a supermarket after the murder, a young girl witnesses Nix's father holding him too tight and treating him badly, and she stands up for him. And Nix is just entranced by this girl who stands up to his mean father. And he knows that his father will never forget this girl. And so then we flash forward 15 years. And Nix is now sort of a mercenary for hire. He's covered head to toe in a full body skeleton tattoo. So it completely hides his identity. And he did that because he looks so much like his father. And his father has disappeared. He's out of Nix's life and has been for years. But Nix is trying to hunt him down to take out his revenge. He kind of keeps watch over three people. He keeps watch over his sister Ember, who he doesn't really have very much contact with, and he doesn't even know if she really knows much about him at all. Becca, who is the young girl from the supermarket, who he has an infatuation with, and also Christina, who is the granddaughter of a mob boss who he is hired to save after she has been kidnapped. And he has a bad feeling about the grandfather. So this is part of sort of the plot line, the subplot that's running through the story. He's still hunting down his father, and he gets word that his father looks like he's headed back into town, and so he's preparing to sort of take his revenge. But then he finds out from his best friend that the bar that Becca works at is hosting a Day of the Dead weekend where they're encouraging people to dress up, and Animal, Nix's friend, knows that he has a massive crush on this girl. It's not even low-key stalking, he full-on stalks her. He created an app game that only she plays and allows him to give her gifts without her realizing that it's him. Part of it is he's protecting her, but he also is in love with her, but he also doesn't know if she would ever be able to look at him and love him back. But because of this Day of the Dead event, he can go, and no one is going to judge him because everyone's dressed up, and she mistakes his full body tattoo as makeup. Look, there are some very questionable moral things going in here because there is a lot of stalking going on. But Nix is such an endearing, such a sweet character when you come down to it, and you could unravel a lot of his motivations by the fact that he has suffered extreme trauma in his life, and he will do anything to keep Becca safe. There are some really sweet moments because he keeps visiting with Christina, the young girl. I think she's only like 5 or 6 years old. You know, he learnt about My Little Pony for her, and he's determined to keep her safe from everyone. And that's the same kind of thing that he has with Becca, except he's been in love with Becca for a very long time. So the way he forms these attachments and relationships with people is really interesting. But I really enjoyed it. I'm very eager to read the second book, which is the story of his best friend Animal, and I think that will be a really fun one to read as well. And then finally, I read Inheritance by Katrina Jackson. This is the second book in the Welcome to Davenport series. It's only about 100 pages long. It's a novella. And the first book in the series was a polyamorous relationship between Mary, Knox and Santos, who we meet again in this book. In fact, it opens with them and they pop up the whole way through the book. But in this story, you have Jonah, who was returned to Seaport after his father's death to take over the family construction business. And when he came back to town, he basically up and left his life that was outside of Seaport, and he hasn't really dealt with that yet. We also meet Lorraine, who has been hired as the new town librarian. The town library is currently being rebuilt by Jonah's company, and she's been hired, and Mary goes out of her way to try and make her feel welcome and is the one to introduce her to Jonah as they're touring sort of the new library, and sparks fly and all sorts of things happen. This one is very short and very steamy. There are a lot of outdoor and public sex scenes because, as it turns out, Lorraine has a bit of an exhibitionist streak, so be aware of that going into it. But it was really fun, and both characters had a lot of things to deal with and process before their relationship could progress any further. So there's a lot packed into 100 pages, but it's but it is worth it. Alright, so that is my wrap up for the last 7 days. In the comments, I'd love to know if you've read any of these books or if you're planning on picking any of them up. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a flame emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.